It's late afternoon in New York City, as we see Peter Parker, the Spider-Man, have a romantic moment with Mary Jane Watson. He reminds himself of how good his life is in spite of all the troubles he had to endure. Because at this moment, he knows he's safe, loved, and most important of all, he's with MJ. We find out that it was all just a dream, though, as Peter wakes up from the loud noises coming from the living room inside his apartment. He gets out of bed to find that one of his roommates, Fred Myers, has been playing Call of Duty, Latveria, this early in the morning. His other roommate's there, too, Randy Robertson. He's an okay guy, but speaking of Fred, well, he's a total D-bag. For one, the guy couldn't even be bothered to use a headset when playing his video games. For another, he's actually a supervillain called Boomerang. In fact, the only reason that Peter agreed to be roommates with this dude is because he's doing some recon work on this D-list supervillain. You see, Fred, dressed as Boomerang, robbed the museum not too long ago. Wilson Fisk seemed mighty interested with whatever he stole, which then prompted the wall crawler to keep an eye on the guy to get to the bottom of this case. Plus, it doesn't hurt to have another guy paying the rent, if you ask Pete. And the fact that Fred just walked in on their apartment to pay for room and board, well, that's just an opportunity that's too good to pass up for Peter. Right now, Peter thinks of confronting Fred about how much of a dillhole he's being, but Randy urges him to let it go for now. Besides, as Randy reminds Pete, he's got an important early morning press conference to attend down at ESU. Later that day, we discover that New York is, as you'd expect, weathering through another alien invasion. The combined might of the Avengers, Fantastic Four, and the X-Men do their best to fend off these extraterrestrials at the moment. United Front people focus on directing their fire away from the civilians. And hold the line. We need to keep these things contained to Midtown. Contained? There's millions of these bugs. But hey, help's on the way, because Spider-Man has just arrived on the scene. The web slinger thinks his fellow superheroes would be glad that he's there, but he's sorely disappointed when he finds out that, well, they're not too pleased about it. You might be wondering why the other Marvel heroes hate Spider-Man now. For that, we'll have to turn the clock back to a few weeks ago, when he received a distress call during one of his usual patrols. Little does he know that there wasn't a crime to be stopped. In fact, this has all been a ruse, one that the Kingpin, who's now New York's mayor, set up, and he's not there to fight Spider-Man either. I simply wanted to present you with this, the key to the city. It's the least I can do to show my appreciation for all your heroic efforts to protect my constituents. At the time, Spidey didn't accept the award. And that's not to mention that Kingpin was just doing this to basically tarnish Spidey's reputation by making the other Marvel heroes think that they're in league with each other. It works too, because the damage has been done. In the present, even Peter's close friends like Johnny Storm think he sucks. Suffice it to say that Pete's been having a bad day at this point. Just earlier, he got exposed for plagiarizing his thesis paper during the ESU conference. And it all snowballed from there. After that incident, he got fired from his editorial job at the Daily Bugle. We also find out that he and MJ are just friends these days, since they broke up some time ago. But, to make matters worse, even Aunt May found out about this whole plagiarism scandal, and she is not too happy with Peter right now. Still, a wall crawler's gotta do what a wall crawler's gotta do. Because in the present, Spider-Man finds a way to stop the alien invasion by jumping into one of their portals. And what he finds there is a shocker. These fools believe they are under attack from another world. Little do they know, it is I, Mysterio, who engineered their greatest defeat. And soon they will all bow before my hell. Spidey kicks Mysterio's butt and saves the day after that. They even bond a little just as he was about to hand over the guy to the Avengers. Still, even if he did save the day, Pete knows that he needs to do something to fix his personal life. And it all starts with getting back with MJ. Hell, they even kiss. So things seem to be looking up for the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man for now. Not long after getting back together with MJ, Spider-Man gets a pep in his step that he hasn't experienced in a long while. In fact, our boy feels so good right now that he even treats bottom-feeder villains like Man, Mountain Marco, and Ringer to a couple of books on deep discount after beating them. He seems like he's in a really positive place. Yeah, good for him. Man, Spidey's good vibes are so contagious that it even makes the villains he defeats wish him well. Of course, Peter credits all of this to MJ. Just the next morning, he finds himself waking up next to the love of his life. So, yeah, people, things are definitely coming up Parker. Well, that is until we find him later in the day. It's revealed that Peter, after the whole plagiarism scandal that got his degree stripped from him, has enrolled at ESU to finally finish his graduate studies. To his surprise, though, Pete's first day at school has him seeing one of his long-standing rogues, Curt Connors, a.k.a. the Lizard. To add to his shock, however, Peter finds out that Dr. Connors isn't a raging reptile this time. Apologies, classroom. This is one of my former Peter Parker. It turns out that ESU hired Curt to give him a second chance at redeeming himself, the same thing that the school is doing with Pete. Plus, Curt informs him that there's no way that his lizard alter ego will be able to hurt anyone this time. A surgically embedded, adamantium-encased inhibitor chip. If as the lizard, I try to harm any living human being in any way, if I so much as hiss in the wrong direction, the chip paralyzes me until I eventually revert to human form. It's a breakthrough we pioneered. And with that, Dr. Curt Connors invites Peter to join his class. He even asks Pete for a word in private, so that they can catch up. Little do they know that a couple of supervillains are already on their way to interrupt their class, as Taskmaster and Black Ant make their way to Connors' classroom at this very moment. Meanwhile, we find out that Dr. Connors has invited Peter to be a part of his accelerated program for gifted students. He knows Peter is one smart dude, and he could definitely help him with their experiments using the isotope genome accelerator that Connors and his class has just built. Peter thinks it's kind of weird that the doctor has an actual working genome accelerator inside the classroom, but he immediately discovers why the man built it, to help Curt permanently reverse his DNA, so that he can stop turning into the lizard. Their conversation is cut short when Taskmaster and Black Ant burst into the classroom. At that moment, Dr. Connors does the heroic thing and turns into his lizard alter ego to try and defend his students. But he becomes paralyzed the moment his inhibitor chip kicks in. Peter tries to come up with a plan to rescue everyone without being outed as Spider-Man. He spots a lab table in the far end of the room, containing liquids he can use as a diversion. And that's when he springs his scheme. Hey, Mr. Taskmaster guy? I had a question. Is that a mask or your real face? What'd it just say to me? Not cool. Man, he's sensitive about that. Sorry, it's just, I know it used to be a mask, but then I heard something happened. And that does look scary gross. So, I was just curious which superhero ripped your face skin off. Was it Wolverine? Bet it was Wolverine. Why you little? Taskmaster loses his cool and hurls Pete right to the lab table. With everyone else distracted, he then uses the liquids in the flasks to create a smokescreen that allows him to suit up and become Spider-Man. Calf! What the hell just happened? I'll tell you what happened, bonehead. Science happened. Which doesn't sound that intimidating, I know. But trust me, this is a vengeful science, and it's testing its hypothesis for justice. A fight ensues, and Spider-Man ultimately defeats the two supervillains. In the aftermath, the lizard thanks the wall crawler, but wonders how he found out about this disturbance. Now, you might think that a genius scientist like Curt can put two and two together and realize that Spidey is Pete. But here's the twist at that moment. Spider-Man turns around to help someone get to his feet after the villain's attack. Hey, wait a sec. I know you. You're Peter Parker. And you're Spider-Man. That's right, fellas. In this scene, we find that Pete and Spider-Man might very well be two different people. A few days later, Peter and MJ go on a double date at the bowling alley with his roommate Randy and Nora Winters, who's technically Randy's ex. All of a sudden, Nora receives a notification on her phone about an ongoing attack happening in Lower Manhattan. Peter, do you need to, Get out of here. Actually, MJ1 don't. And that, guys, is highly unusual. This is Peter Parker we're talking about, the same guy who lives by the whole "with great power comes great responsibility" mantra. Yet, at this moment, he chooses to abandon his self-imposed quest for justice and bowl like the Big Lebowski. Meanwhile, there's havoc all over Lower Manhattan as civilians flee to get away from a literally huge threat that has arrived in the area. What the heck is that thing, Sarge? Never seen something like that in my life. I have, rookie. Been a long time. That there? That's the Tree Sentinel. The Tri-Sentinel continues to rampage in the middle of the city, and local law enforcement know that they don't stand a chance against this gigantic threat. And with Peter Parker choosing not to intervene, there's no Spider-Man to help the good people of New York. Or is there? You hear me? Dispatch? Get word out to the Avengers, National Guard, parking enforcement. The freaking Tree Sentinel is loose again. Wow. Listen to him. Whiz, new cops. This guy knows his stuff. He wins the daily double on today's obscure super-villain Jeopardy. Or he would have if he'd remembered to phrase it as a question. Hey there, you weird experiment in genocidal corporate synergy. Miss me? But if Peter's out at the bowling alley, who's this guy under the spider mask? What do you guys think? Any ideas on who this other Spidey might be? Let us know in the comments section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel to be the first to see part 2 of this amazing Spider-Man story where we find out the truth behind the identity of this new Spider-Man. We'll see you real soon, friends. Only here at KRTV Marvel.